Welcome to Nature Calls, Conversations from the Hudson Valley. Our team's goal is to present science-based information about gardening and all things nature in New York's Hudson Valley. Hosts Jean and Tim, along with team members Teresa and Linda, are master gardener volunteers for New York's Columbia and Greene counties. So if you're interested in gardening or nature or nuggets of information about what's happening outside your door, settle in. Enjoy the conversation. Whatever the season, we have something to say.
Hi, I'm Tim Kennelty.
And I'm Jean Thomas.
And welcome to Nature Calls, Conversations from the Hudson Valley.
We're with Kelsey West today, and we'll be talking about a subject that seems very exotic to me. I'm not a fisherman, so eels are a strange animal, and I've only ever seen one or two. Kelsey's going to demystify these animals and explain why they're important. Columbia Greene Cornell Cooperative Extension is lucky enough to be host to one of 12 sites along the Hudson River, and Kelsey helps coordinate the staff and volunteers at the Hanacroy Creek site, where they're doing a lot of eel research. Naturally, we have a million questions.
Yeah, and Kelsey, I have to say, I've been kind of waiting to talk to you about this because when I heard about eels, I thought, it's fascinating. I can't wait to talk to you. But give us the official information. What kind of organizations? I know there's more than one that coordinate this project. Can you tell us about that?
This project is coordinated by DEC's Hudson River Estuary Program with the Hudson River National Estuarine Research Reserve in partnership with NUIPIC and the Water Resources Institute at Cornell University. So CCE Columbia Greene just coordinates volunteers at the Hanacroy Creek site, which is one of 12 different sites located on tributaries of the Hudson River. So the project as a whole has been active since 2008, but this year marks the 13th year that the net has been installed at the Hanacroy Creek.
All right, how long have you personally been involved in this project?
So I started assisting with the project through my role at CCE in 2019, but I started transitioning into the volunteer coordination role the following year. So what's kind of cool about this project, since it's been running so long, is that I actually participated as a high school student, one of my classes. So it's kind of interesting to be back in this coordination role as something that I got to be involved with as a youngster.
So I didn't even know there were eels in the Hudson. Can we talk about some basics for ignorant me? Is an eel a fish, and are there multiple species of eels in the Hudson?
Sure. So yeah, an eel is a fish. It's one of the ray-finned fishes, and there are roughly 800 species of eels in the world. The American eel is the only species that we have in the Hudson River, and that's the eel that we focus on as part of this study.
Why are you studying eels?
So,
what are they used for, and did we almost wipe them out too?
Yeah, actually. So eels are really important for a few reasons. Culturally, they're very important. So they were historically a really important food source for Native and Indigenous people in this area and other areas as well. But they also are highly sought after for the fishing industry as food and bait. So they're also really important ecologically, as you could imagine. They're a predator. They eat fish, mollusks, insects, but they're also prey for larger fish and for birds as well. So really ingrained in our food webs and ecosystems. But as you kind of alluded, they were really declining in population during the 1900s, especially from the mid-century onward. There are a lot of reasons, but most of them were human-driven. So that includes habitat loss, just generally from human impacts. Dams and barriers to aquatic passage is also a really big reason. So as we'll kind of touch upon later, these fish are migratory and they need to be able to pass to suitable habitat. So installing dams prevents them from doing so. Water pollution is another factor. Overfishing, hydroelectric turbines will kill the eels, as you could imagine. Climate change, food web changes, and also just parasites to eels.
And they sound to be really important because they're like in the middle of the food web almost, right? They're predatory, but they're also eaten by other fish and animals.
Absolutely. And they're incredibly long-lived as well. So they once they're established, they do remain a really critical part of that ecosystem.
So they're long-lived. What's their life cycle? Do they lay eggs? How does it work? Are they like other fish?
Yeah, sure. So they do lay eggs. A really interesting part of their life cycle is that they're catadromous. So this means that they're born in the ocean and they migrate and live most of their lives in freshwater ecosystems. Then they return back to the ocean to spawn.
Oh, tell us that word again, because I want to use it in the cocktail conversation.
Sure, it's catadromous.
Catadromous. Okay.
Like salmon.
So actually, the exact opposite of salmon.
Good, Jean.
Okay.
Good.
How about striped bass?
Yes.
Got one?
Yep.
They're catadromous. Eels and striped bass.
I believe striped bass. Oh my gosh.
Okay,
I just doubt myself on just about anything I say, so maybe we don't want to include that.
Well, you know the word catadromous, so
Yeah.
I give you a lot of credit.
You get points for that.
But the opposite term is anadromous, and so those are organisms that spawn in freshwater, live their lives in the ocean, and then return to freshwater.
So what's the whole life cycle for your typical eel?
Yeah, so it's actually just an incredible journey that these organisms go through. So they are born in the Sargasso Sea. Once they're born, they are these tiny, flat, transparent kind of larval fishes, and those are called leptocephali. So at this life stage, they're really tiny, really flat, really cute, but they begin a year-long migration all the way up to freshwater tributaries. So they travel thousands of miles, and they often catch rides in Gulf streams to aid their travels. So over the course of the year, they'll start beginning to enter tributaries along the eastern coast, starting in North Carolina, and all the way up to Canada. And we're very fortunate to have them enter the Hudson River and its tributaries.
Wow. Where's the Sargasso Sea?
I was going to ask the same question.
Bermuda is only landmass that's located in the Sargasso Sea, so hopefully that gives you a little geographical context. But yeah, it's just in the Atlantic Ocean. It's really unique in that its borders are defined by currents, so that's pretty neat.
Are there eels in Europe that do the same kind of migration? Are there European eels with like berets and things like that?
Well, I can't vouch for the berets, but yeah, so there are European eels, and they go through a really similar migration. They're also born in the Sargasso Sea. They do take 2 years to get to Europe instead of the 1 year it takes the American eels to get there.
Well, it's twice as far.
Yeah, it's much further.
And they're more laid back, probably.
Yeah, and more mellow. They get along better.
Like physically, how long are they? Are they large fish? Are they?
So at the larval stage, they're millimeters long.
Okay.
So once they reach the freshwater tributaries, they'll start to undergo some physiological changes. They round out a little bit more, they get a little longer, and they start to develop organs. Well, they have organs, but their organs continue to develop a little bit more. And at that stage, they become the glass eel, which is what we're actually trying to catch as part of this project.
So the adults are what, a foot long or how long?
Like a human arm length, I would say. The females tend to be a little bit bigger. They have the burden of carrying eggs eventually, so they're much larger.
How long does it take a little bitty one to become an adult?
So usually after a year, they'll start to undergo more physiological changes. They'll gain pigment, at which point, when they're about 2 years old, we'll use the term elver to describe them. So at this point, they're getting more muscular. They're kind of looking more like what you think an eel might look like. And, they'll just continue eating and growing from there, living in the habitat, and they'll just continue to grow to that size.
Okay, I got to backtrack. They leave the Sargasso Sea, and it's going to take them a year to get up here. Mm-hmm. Okay. Do they travel in a pack?
That I'm not sure of.
Okay.
And they probably don't call it a pack, too. That's my guess.
Well, they are babies, so
a
it's a school.
A school. Are they traveling as adults?
So after they've kind of started growing, after they've kind of grown for those 2 years, they'll enter the next life stage. They're called yellow eels at that point. And that's when they're just kind of doing their thing, living in the freshwater, enjoying their lives. But at a certain point, something calls them to return back to the Sargasso to spawn. Uh-huh. So they will migrate all the way back down there, which is pretty incredible. So that's after quite some time. Males tend to live in our freshwater ecosystems from 10 to 12 years. Females will hang out a little bit longer, up to 20 years, and then they just say, all right, it's time to go. They'll spawn and they'll die.
Oh, so once they spawn, they die.
Yes, that's their last big mission in life.
And females can live to 20 years old. Wow.
Yes. And I don't know how much truth this is. There's some folklore about the European eels that they've found 80-year-old eels before. And there are a lot of different myths and folklores about,
How do you know how old an eel is?
That's a great question.
They have rings or
half and see the rings, right?
But another really interesting thing about their migration back to the Sargasso is that nobody has actually seen an eel spawn before. So it's kind of a mystery exactly where they go to do this. There have been some studies where they'll actually try to radio tag the eels. A couple of years ago, there was a study that tagged 38 female eels, and either the tags fell off or other organisms ate them. But one lone female made it to the very edge of the Sargasso, and right as she entered, the tag fell off. So that was a bust. But so there's a lot of mystery about the eel and a lot of opportunities to get involved and study them.
It's fascinating.
Ultra cool.
Yeah, I did not realize eels are slippery, so the tags fall off, right?
Well, I think that one was just a stripper eel.
Easy, yeah. Easy.
Okay, back to the American eel. We know why they're important and they're coming back. Now comes the fun part, when you pull on your boots and go down to the river. What exactly do you do to collect these little guys and count them?
Sure, yeah, so this is the project. We are focusing on catching the glass eels, so those tiny 1-year-old eels. And I don't know if I mentioned before, but they're completely transparent, which is very interesting as well. So you can actually see their internal organs, and that's why they're called glass eels. So we have volunteers get involved beginning in April and running usually through May to kind of match their migration. And we have to check the net. There's a pike net, which is installed at each of these sites and at the Hannacroy Creek.
Wait, what's a pike net?
A pike net is a specially designed net with wings and a funnel system that only catches really small fish. So ideally glass eels, and we'll also catch some elvers, which those are the kind of 2-year-old fish or the eels with the pigment, and just other small fish sometimes find their way in, but that's okay.
But they're tiny.
Yeah, they're tiny.
So are you looking for volunteers to do this? I mean, are you recruiting volunteers?
So we are always looking for volunteers. Folks are more than welcome to get involved. It's really exciting. And the nice part about volunteering is that it's very flexible too. We're only able to check the net at low tide, just for safety reasons. So basically the time that we're sampling shifts about an hour each day, ranging from 7 a.m. till 6 p.m. every day of the week. So it really can accommodate a lot of different schedules. And if you can come once a week, that's great. If you can come less, that's fine. If you want to try to come every day, join us.
And so you can check the tides in the newspaper.
Yeah, so we'll put out a schedule to sign up. I didn't actually know that. I always end up going online.
I'm here for you. Huh?
Have to check it out.
You are a wealth of information, Jean, I just have to say.
Mostly useless.
Besides buying a new pair of boots, do I need training if I want to do this? What do you do to train volunteers or to get them? What do they do in the process?
Sure. Yeah. So we typically hold a few options for trainings at the beginning of the season. So we'll go over everything you need to do at the net. The great part about the net is that all of the equipment that you'll need is there already. So just kind of wear weather appropriate clothing and you'll be comfortable and dry. We have waders on site. So after the training, we also want people to continue feeling comfortable. There's a lot of stuff you have to kind of keep in mind when you're sampling. There's a sampling protocol that you need to follow. So we'll actually monitor the sign-in sheet and make sure that people are being paired with experienced volunteers. So we've had folks involved since the beginning of this project for 13 years, and we also have folks that are brand new. So we'll make sure those people get paired together so that everyone can kind of learn, and it's a great community effort.
How do you count them?
That's a great question. So when you arrive at the net, you'll put on your pair of waders, go down into the creek, and open up the pike net. We usually scoop the eels from the net into buckets and bring them back on shore, at which point you'll either count them individually, and we want to count the glass eels and the elvers separately. Or if you look into the net and you see thousands and thousands of eels, we do some algebra and do some mass extrapolation, so it's quicker to count and you're not there for like 8 hours, which has happened in the past.
They used to count them all, even if there were thousands?
Yes. Yeah. So it's a newer protocol. But you can find either 0 or like tens of thousands, depending on a couple of different factors. So.
And what are you learning from doing this? I mean, obviously you're learning kind of the numbers on a particular day, but to what end? What is the purpose of the research? To understand populations or individual characteristics of them? What are you learning?
Yeah, so it's mostly just to understand population dynamics. So it can help DEC make regulatory decisions about these eels. So they are, I think, technically endangered still. There has been a little bit of an incline in their population over the last 10 years, but they just want to understand kind of where the populations are at and also understand the migration a little bit more as well.
So after you count these little guys, I'm still thinking about the little bucket. You count them all, and then you just toss them back in the water, and they continue on their way?
Sure. So you'll count them, weigh them, take a dry weight, or weigh a small subset of the eels that you catch. And once you're all set and all your data has been collected, we'll just walk them a little further up the creek. That kind of helps them on their journey to suitable habitat. And it also prevents them from going right back in the net again, because that would just be bad science.
Yeah, you should give them another couple of yards up the path.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it doesn't hurt them to be trapped, right?
No, and occasionally you'll find like 1 or 2 dead, which is always really unfortunate, but the net is submerged in water, they're comfortable, they're getting enough oxygen, and we try to count them very quickly and keep them in shade and things like that so that they're not injured or harmed in the process.
And I have to ask this question, they don't bite, do they?
Oh, no. No, that's one of the most popular questions we get from school groups.
Right. Well, there you go.
That's us.
That's us, exactly.
Kelsey, what's your very favorite part of this whole thing? We know that you're famous as being the Earl Girl.
Oh.
Eel Girl.
Or the Earl Girl.
Or the Earl Girl.
I wouldn't say that, but definitely my favorite part of the project is that it just brings community members together. We welcome all ages at the net, people who have been involved for a really long time, people who are just kind of getting into citizen science, and it's their first experience taking environmental field data, because we do take a slew of other measurements as well. So it's very neat. But yeah, so we all just have so much to learn from each other, and it's a great experience to get different people with different skill sets and knowledge bases there, and to learn and to help with this effort.
Citizen science is really helping us learn, right? Because it's this army of people, right, doing work and gathering data.
Absolutely, yes. And that's what this whole project is about.
Okay, I think it reaffirms our philosophy here at Nature Calls. If you're in a garden or a nature preserve, there's something meaningful any one of us can do to make a difference. Thank you, Kelsey, and I'm so glad to hear that you're involved and interested in the community of the whole thing.
Eel Girl.
Eel Girl.
Oh, no.
It gives us a whole nother dimension. As always, you've brought us a fresh insight into our place in the rich natural world of the Hudson Valley. Thank you.
Thank you both.
That concludes another episode of Nature Calls, Conversations from the Hudson Valley. We would like to thank Sandra Linnell and Devin Connolly from Cornell Cooperative Extension of Columbia and Greene Counties for production support. And a special thank you to our listeners for joining us on this episode of Nature Calls, Conversations from the Hudson Valley. You can find links to any of the topics mentioned in this episode at our website at ccecolumbiagreen.org. Comments and suggestions for future topics may be directed to us at columbiagreenmgb@cornell.edu or on the CCE Master Gardener Volunteers of Columbia and Greene Counties Facebook page. For more information about Cornell Cooperative Extension of Columbia and Greene Counties, visit our website at ccecolumbiagreen.org or visit us in Hudson or in Acre. Cornell Cooperative Extension provides equal programming and employment opportunities.